So this was a little bit of a blast from the past for me. I've not played World of Warships in quite a few years now. I mean, I even missed the whole changes to the carriers, where you no longer have all your squadrons flying about. So that was a weird thing to come back to. However, I was really curious how the subs were going to play, so I hopped on the test server and gave it a go. Now the first thing to say is I thought I played these terribly. And then having said that, I went and had a look at some of the other YouTubers who play this game a lot, and actually they encountered a lot of the same issues I was having. Now that's not to say I played well, but at least I knew that it wasn't just me spotting these things. So how exactly do they play? Well, they're submarines, so they can dive. That's probably the most important thing to say. Then of course they have torps, and they can ping, which allows the torps to lock on and track towards a target. Except for carriers, which apparently can't be pinged. Whether that's deliberate or an error, I'm not quite sure. There were 2 submarines available in tier 10, that was the US Balal, and the U-2501, which was the German sub. Now the Balal has a 14k range on its tops, but the German sub only had about 10km range. The tops can be fired forwards for both of them, but backwards as well on the US sub, and I didn't actually realise that while I was playing, I don't think. The whole pinging concept is fairly easy, though I will note that pings move faster when you are underwater than when you are surfaced, again something I didn't realise till after I had been playing. Now a single ping gives you a lock on, and this can be done before or after you launch your torpedoes. A second ping on the same section of the ship basically upgrades the torps to do a citadel hit. So you can imagine the amount of damage you can output with that. Not that I ever managed it, I don't think. So your role, if you can call it that, is to basically hide away, stop yourself being seen, and preferably from range do damage. It's very much a bit of a solo event. It doesn't involve much team play, and you're kind of there just doing your own thing. As I say, diving obviously plays a big role in the submarines. However, the time you can dive is limited. It's a reasonable amount of time at tier 10. My understanding is that at tier 6 it's a lot less time, which probably isn't great. But basically at the start of the match you get a diving battery, and the timer runs out gradually the more you are underwater, and if you are seen or spotted while you're underwater, then the battery drops faster. All in all, you get about 10 minutes of dive time depending on upgrades at tier 10, so that's pretty reasonable. Now, regarding the actual combat, let's talk about the different classes that you'll be going after. Going after the carrier or a CV, you can hunt them down, perhaps without being seen at all, but then you can't lock onto it, so you'll struggle to sink it quickly compared to perhaps firing at a battleship. That said, unless you surface, they can't hurt you, so you're fairly safe if you have plenty of dive time left. However, if you surface, they will be able to attack you with all of their planes. Moving on to battleships, they're probably the easiest target to hit, as long as they don't have support and they can't see you. That said, they do have depth charge bombers, which can kill you very quickly if you are dived, so you can't really sit in one place at any point. Equally, if you're surfaced, they can hit you with their guns, and you have very little health. So you can be doing lots of damage to them, but you need to be at a long distance so that they can't see you, and preferably catch them when they're on their own. And then the whole double ping thing is quite difficult to do, though I expect more experienced players and players who've played them a lot more will achieve that without too much of an issue. Cruisers you can definitely get shots off at, again you can lock onto them, but they're likely to be near and protected by other ships, so if you get seen you will die pretty quickly from either depth charges or cannon fire if you're surfaced. Though not all cruisers have depth charges, so that will depend on what support they have around them from their team. Destroyers will make very short work of subs. They are faster, they are more maneuverable, and if you just dive near them, all they have to do is do a drive-by over the top of you and hit the G key, drop all their depth charges, and you are dead. If you surface versus a destroyer, they'll dispatch you pretty quickly with their guns as well. You can hit them with torps, but they'll also probably dodge them pretty easily. And then fighting against other subs, well, you can lock onto them with the ping. and you can fire your torps at them, but they're probably going to dodge them. You're going to have to catch them off guard. Better chance you have at dispatching another sub is to have the American sub so that you can fire backwards as you go past them. Just thinking about playing against the subs, I guess the first thing to reiterate is that subs are really weak. So with 10 to 15,000 hit points here or there, they die very quickly at tier 10. And generally speaking, subs were more of an annoyance than anything else when I was playing as other ships. I found myself dodging their torps a lot, even in a battleship. Obviously people will become better at using the pings in time, but as it stands you can dodge the torps still. Plus, as a battleship, or for most of the battleships, you have access to depth charge bombers, which means that as long as you know the rough area of where those subs are, you can drop depth charges on them. And again, they will at least scare off a sub, if not do a significant amount of damage, because the blast radius on those things is so big. If they're surfaced, there's absolutely no reason not to unload your cannons at them, because again, if you get a couple of good hits, they will be dead. Now, most subs won't want to get up close and personal to groups of ships because they will be dispatched very quickly by destroyers, so assuming you are near your lines with the destroyers and cruisers, then they will be trying to avoid you. Their main targets are probably going to be battleships and carriers, which are alone and unsupported, and potentially heavy cruisers. Initially when I started playing, I was avoiding them thinking they would absolutely tear me apart in a T10 battleship, but actually they pose less of a threat than I expected, and as I say, I was managing to dodge some of their torps. Even with this ability to lock on, it's not horrendously overpowered. And the other thing is, while their detection radius is obviously very small, it's not as small as it should be. And frankly, planes can spot dived subs, so they're not as easily hidden as they probably should be in real life, but maybe that's correct for a game like this, because if they could just hide forever, then it wouldn't really be fair, which is frankly another reason for having the battery system. So in summary, they were quite entertaining to play as something different, but I think in the long run they need to do a bit more work on them. At the moment they die very easily. Now while I can accept that you would want to be playing them at range, at tier 10 to have one that only has a 10km range on its tops, I don't think that's far enough to protect it. And that's why everyone is saying the Balal was so much better, because it had tops front, back, a better turning circle, and a 14km range. At that range, yeah, it's easier to keep yourself alive. But if you're having to get within 10k and less, because really you need to be less than that to be getting decent hits, then you're putting yourself at extreme risk all the time. Now, what I have seen mentioned a few times is this idea of them having a battery that recharges when you go to the surface. That might actually be quite an interesting option, because it would force you to surface more regularly, so you can't hide away forever, but equally it means that at the end of the game you wouldn't just have a bunch of submarines sat at the edge of the map trying to avoid everyone because they can't dive anymore. So yeah, while they were fun to play, there's obviously still a few kinks to work out, and we'll have to see where they go with that if they're still adamant they're going to add these things. Did anyone else manage to play the test? What did you think the good and bad points of the subs were? Let me know down below. Do you think they should still be added? Do you think they need more adjustment? I'd be quite interested to hear what you guys think. Otherwise, thanks very much for watching. Please do like, share and subscribe, and I'll see you all soon for another video.